my favorite dish as I watch. Creepy. Then I can eat it from her own hands. So David agreed and sent Tamar to Amnon's house to prepare some food for him. And when Tamar arrived at Amnon's house, she went to the place where he was lying down so he could watch her mix some dough. And then she baked his favorite dish for him. But when she set the serving tray before him, he refused to eat. Everyone get out of here, Amnon told the servants, so they all left. And then he said to Tamar, now bring the food into my bedroom and feed it to me here. Creepy. So Tamar took his favorite dish to him, but as she was feeding him, he grabbed her and demanded, come to bed with me, my darling sister. Creepy. Everything about this is creepy and weird and bad, right? It's wrong on many levels, right? Now, when you picture this story, how old are these people? Well, we actually know their ages, right? We know the ages of these three kids. Amnon is the oldest of all of David's children, and he is 20 years old when this story happens. Okay? So imagine people you know who are 20. Right? That's the age demographic we're dealing with here. Tamar, Amnon's mother, was Ahinoam of Jezreel, one of David's wives. Tamar was 19. She was a year younger than Amnon, one of the oldest children. Her mother was Maacah. And Absalom is 18, and he's the third of David's son. He has the same mother as Tamar. You with me so far? It's a little bit soap opera-y, keeping everybody straight, okay? David's everybody's dad, right? Yes, sir. No, we're talking about Amnon has one mom, Tamar and Absalom have the same mom, right? So Amnon is the oldest, and then he has two siblings from one of the other wives, or two half-siblings from one of the other wives who are very close. They're all like some of the oldest kids. You ever met like a really big family, and you've got like kind of the first litter and the second litter, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? And so they're kind of like the oldest of this crew, right? So when you picture the story, I feel like it's important that while we imagine this story, to imagine people you know around this age. This is who we're dealing with here, right? I also want to go ahead and take this opportunity to just say this. There is no such thing as a 20-year-old kid. This drives me insane. I've worked with young people my entire life. I was always the youngest person at every job I have ever done. I grew a beard because I got tired of being mistaken for a student when I was a high school teacher. I would be wearing a tie, and I got yelled at for going to the teacher's lounge. I got stopped at and asked for a hall pass. Like all the time. That's literally why I grew a beard, because I kept being mistaken for a student, right? Even now as pastor, I got to the point where I was a youth pastor, and I would like take my youth group somewhere, and they would be like, hey, we're here to bowl or whatever. And they'd be like, okay, cool, just send your youth leader over here and we'll get you guys all set up. I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy, right? But then something happened a few years back, my last few years in youth ministry. I was all of a sudden the oldest. I was the old youth pastor everywhere I went. And I had all these young guys, like 20-year-old guys, being like, hey, man, you've got all this experience and all this wisdom. I want to ask you questions. I'm like, oh, no, it's happening. I refer to this as my youth minister expiration date, right? When the hair started going gray, that's how I knew. And so then I became pastor, and now I'm like the youngest guy in all the meetings I go to. So I've always been kind of on the young end. And I've worked with young people my entire life, and this drives me bananas. Whenever people go, well, he's just a 22-year-old kid. There is no such thing. I'm like, no, he's a man. He's a young man. Let's have the appropriate expectation of what he's able to do. Yeah, I'd say 16, 17 is when you better start acting like it, because you got a couple years figured out, right? I think that we have a very, very low bar, particularly for young men in our society. It's crazy. It's crazy what we excuse and go, oh, well, he's just a kid. No, he's a young man. We should expect him to act that way, right? So there's no such thing as a 20-year-old kid. And I know what you're thinking. Well, whenever you're my age, 22-year-olds seem like kids. Yeah, I know. All the more reason we should remember this. I got a almost 10-year-old. My oldest kid is about to be 10. That seems weird to me. I don't feel any different from when I was 10. I still like all the same stuff. You know what I mean? I'm the same up here. as when I was 10, right? And I'm like, we're halfway done with her. We're halfway to adulthood with this one, right? We're more than halfway. We're on the downhill slide. Although I think these next couple years are going to be pretty rough. Here's what you got to remember. I didn't know what to do with a baby. They handed me a baby, and I was like, what do I do with this thing? I know what to do with junior high kids. I know what to do with high schoolers. I've got 100 years of experience dealing with those little monsters. I know exactly how to handle that, okay? I'm not worried about that. So, these are young adults, okay? But here's the thing. Amnon is the oldest. He's the oldest prince of Israel. So does it seem like maybe he's used to kind of getting what he wants? Probably a lot, right? So this is where the story's going to get rough, okay? Verse 12, she cried, "No, my brother, do not be foolish. Do not do this to me. Such wicked things are not done in Israel. Where could I go in my shame? And you will be called one of the great fools in Israel. So please, just speak to the king about it, and he will let you marry me." Weird, I know. She's in a tough position. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her, and since he was stronger than her, he raped her, his sister. And then suddenly Amnon's love turned to hate. And he hated her even more than he had loved her. "Get out of here," he snarled at her. "No, no," cried Tamar. Sending me away now is worse than what you have already done to me." But Amnon would not listen to her, so he shouted for his servant and demanded, "Throw this woman out and lock the door behind her." So the servant put her out and locked the door behind her, and she was wearing a long, beautiful robe, as was the custom in those days for the king's virgin daughters. But now Tamar tore her robe and put ashes on her head, and then with her face in her hands, she went away crying. This is a rough story. I mean, this is evil. This is wicked. This is an evil thing to do to anybody, but to do to your sister is crazy, horrible. So why does she say this thing about, well, just ask if dad will let us get married? Do you think she wants to marry her brother? No, this sounds a whole lot like, let me just say what I need to get out of here. She's alone in a room with him, and he does this to his own sister. Then it says his love turned to hate. Once he had gotten what he wanted, he literally throws her away. And this is a bad story. So not only does he do this to his sister, but then he publicly shames her. This is like an open secret. Everybody knows about this right away. Her literal clothing signifies what he's done to her. This is no secret. To think that you could do this and then not even try to cover it up. At least when David stole another man's wife, he I'm saying at least like this was good, but he at least had the decency to lie about it. Amnon is worse. Not only does he do this, he doesn't even try to keep it a secret. It's like the attitude is, well, who cares? What are they going to do to me? Why does he think he can get away with this? I mean, he's the oldest. He's the oldest prince of Israel. Does it seem like maybe he's gotten away with similar stuff before? I mean, you don't get to 20 and just all of a sudden decide to act this way out of nowhere. You know? We used to run this program at First Baptist Highlands called Celebrate Recovery. Many of you have probably heard about it. It's a kind of like AA, but it's more of like just a general, they say hurts, habits, and hang-ups, right? Just helping people get through that. And it's from a Christian perspective, right? It's a great program. We ran it for many years. And our associate pastor at the time, he's the pastor there now, his name's Wes. My buddy Wes has this gift to be able to just see the clear line from A to B, like instantly, and just, there's no, you know how some people like sugarcoat things? Wes has never done that once before in his entire life. And so we were in this meeting, and one of the people who had been lifelong, their entire adult life had been a drug addict, asked Wes, they said, how is it possible? I mean, you were about the same age, similar upbringing, grew up very similar to each other. How is it that your life turned out so good and my life turned out so bad? And I will never forget what Wes stood on 10 toes, looked this dude straight in the eyes and said these words. He goes, you really want to know? And the guy said, yeah. And Wes said, I've been consistently making the right choice for the last 25 years. And I went, oh, dang, Wes. But he ain't wrong. Maybe could have been delivered a little bit more gently, right? But you don't get to 20 years old and do this to your own sister without any prior hiccups. You know what I mean? He didn't just wake up one day and go, I think I'll be a total monster. You know? Yeah, and to expect that nothing will happen to him. You know? Okay, well, we're going to talk about David here in a minute. David's not off the hook. I would say that he did know this was going to happen. The prophet told him, your family will never know peace. This is going to be the thing, technically this is the thing that starts a civil war in Israel. But what really started it was David 20 years before with Bathsheba, right? Was David completely giving up any kind of like moral integrity, right? So look at this, verse 20. So she leaves, and her brother Absalom saw her. Is it true that Amnon has been with you? Well, my sister, keep quiet for now since he's your brother. Don't you worry about it. So Tamar lived as a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. And when King David heard what had happened, he was very angry. And though Absalom never spoke to Amnon about this, he hated Amnon deeply because of what he had done to his sister. So all of a sudden, she goes and tells her brother Absalom what happens, and he says, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. Total big brother move, by the way, right? But then whenever their dad, the king, hears about it, he doesn't do anything. Why does she go live in her brother's house? Well, because the house of the king isn't safe. It's not safe to live with her own family, right? The house of the king of Israel is dangerous. That probably tells you a lot about what kind of environment David has created for his family. You know? Now, earlier in the story, who earlier in the story had out of control children that he didn't do anything about? Eli. Yeah. Eli was the priest, and he had these two sons who were just completely out of control. And he knew about it, and what did he do? Nothing. And so God was not pleased with this, right? Absalom is Tamar's like full brother. They have the same mom, right? He tells her, don't say anything about it, even though everybody knows. And he says, because he's your brother. Does that mean that he's off the hook? No, because based on what happens next, he's definitely not off the hook with Absalom, right? It's almost, I read that as almost like, well, you know how he is. You know what's going to happen. He's just like this. We all know. We all got people like this, a family member, a friend, somebody who we know. It's like, yeah, well, it's not a surprise. You're all thinking of somebody right now, and if not, then it's probably you. If you're like, no, nobody in my family's like that, I hate to tell you. Right? Seems like Amnon kind of gets away with this a lot. So, let's keep reading. Chapter 13, starting in verse 23. 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep were being sheared at Baal-Hazar near Ephraim, Absalom invited all the king's sons to come to a feast. He went to the king and said, my sheep shearers are now at work. Would the king and his servants please come to celebrate the occasion with me? The king replied, no, my son. If we all came, we would be too much of a burden on you. And Absalom pressed him, but the king would not come, though he gave Absalom his blessing. Well then, Absalom said, if you can't come, how about sending my brother Amnon with us? Why Amnon? The king asked. You think there's been a little bit of tension between the brothers for the last 2 years? And all of a sudden you're inviting him over for a party? David's like, what's that about? But Absalom kept on pressing the king until finally he agreed to let all his sons attend, including Amnon. So Absalom prepared a feast fit for a king. And Absalom told his men, wait until Amnon gets drunk, then at my signal, kill him. Do not be afraid. I am the one who has given you this command. Take courage and do it. So at Absalom's signal, they murdered Amnon. You thought your family was crazy. I mean, this would make a crazy movie. You know what I mean? Like this is a whole part of the Bible, of the story of King David. I'd be willing to bet that probably the majority of you in here have never really read this story before. Right? It's a crazy story. Maybe during a Bible reading plan once a long time ago. But I mean, this is an insane story. And you read it and you go, this is, like, imagine if this really happened in your family. Imagine, like, most of you probably have siblings. Who's the oldest in their family? I'm the oldest, right? Who's the youngest? Who's the baby of the family, right? And then I'm forgetting something. Am I forgetting somebody? Right? Yeah, the middle children, right? We're the middle children, right? Yeah, that's always a classic joke, right? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were no cops to call. That didn't exist back then. Who's the person who's supposed to deal with this? The king. And if you can't make it to the king, who's the person in your house who's supposed to make sure that everyone's safe? Your dad. And this is the same person we're talking about here. And why did they wait for 2 years? They were probably hoping that their dad would do something. And he did nothing. Yes, sir. He definitely wanted the king to be there. I mean, yeah, I think it's perfectly safe to read that into the story, for sure. I mean, it doesn't explicitly say that he wanted the king there to watch his brother get what he had coming, but he definitely really wanted him to be there and really tried to get him to show up. And what does it say about David that he won't even be in the room? You ever have that where it's like, I know it's going to be tense, so I think I'd rather just not go? The problem is that David's the person who's responsible for being in this mess in the first place, and he's the one who's supposed to be responsible for leading his family and for leading the nation. And he's failing across the board. Yes. He's technically the third oldest son. There's one more in between from a different wife, but he's not. That's a good question. Like, you're saying, like, would he, like, kill David and kill the oldest son? Yeah. Here's the deal. He is going to try to kill David later in the story. So I don't think it's crazy to assume that, right? Look, obviously the king can't do anything. He can't take care of business. So I'm going to have to step up and do it. So maybe, I mean, it's very, very likely that this could have been like we're going to cut off the head of the snake all at once here kind of situation. We don't know that for sure, but I think it's safe to, if you read it that way, it wouldn't be like a crazy interpretation, right? So they wait 2 years. What do you think's happening in Absalom's heart that whole time? Yeah. Oh, he was already angry, justifiably so. And then it just kept festering. And, yeah, exactly. And he probably spent a lot of time thinking about how this was going to go. He obviously planned it out, organized it. This wasn't some heat of the moment thing. This wasn't like the night it happened, he got so angry that they got in a fight and he killed his brother. He was like, all right, I'm going to do something about this. So back to your question, I mean, is Absalom right? Is he justified, or is this wrong? I mean, it's not good to kill your brother, right? Yeah, his anger is justified, his actions aren't. Here's the deal. Of course, we understand why Absalom does what he does. I mean, if you don't understand that, think it through for a minute. I get feeling that way. Yeah, I mean, Amnon deserves punishment, no question. And honestly, you could very easily make the argument that he deserves to be put to death here. And in that world, they live in what's called an honor-shame culture, where like not only have you shamed yourself and shamed your sister and shamed your father and shamed the nation, you brought shame on everybody. Yeah, yeah. It's been 2 years, and Amnon, or it says that Tamar has been living in Absalom's house. Like it says, she's a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house, which means she went to go live with her brother Absalom because she didn't feel safe with the rest of the family. And instead of David coming in and saying, we're going to deal with this and we're going to do what needs to be done, David just said, let's just see if this blows over. Let's see if this blows over. At best, it's just cowardly. At worst, it's evil. Or somewhere in between, or some combination, right? I mean, Amnon deserves punishment. He deserves even to be put to death. What did she say to him? Such evil things are not done in Israel. But who's the person who should be making that judgment? The king. Yeah, if anything, he should have been more prepared because he's already been given this warning. Or maybe he just goes, well, it's going to be what it's going to be. I can't do anything about it. Maybe he starts throwing a pity party and going, oh, this is just my lot in life. I'm just, resigned to this. I mean, you could read a lot into the story, and obviously we're reading a lot of intention here, right? But the king, David, is the one who should be the one to administer justice, and he doesn't. If this had happened to another man in Israel's family, to another man's daughter, would he have intervened? I mean, considering how angry he got about a sheep getting stolen, a story about a stolen lamb, he understands what's right and wrong, right? Sometimes when it's your own kids or your own family, you have a hard time seeing what's really going on. You want to how I know that? Because I've had a lot of parent-teacher conferences over the years. And guess what? Nobody's kid's ever bad. Everybody's kid just got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Can you believe it? So your kid got mixed up with the wrong crowd, and this person's kid got mixed up with the wrong crowd, but they're hanging out with each other. So who's the wrong crowd here? I mean, this is a natural human tendency to go, well, my kid didn't really do anything. It sounds a little bit like Saul trying to justify sin, right? This is his role both as king and as father. And he fails in both. Absalom waited for 2 years, and his dad, the king, did nothing. So in his mind, he's having to take justice into his own hands because no one else will. So in Absalom's mind, he is perfectly in the right. And honestly, you kind of get where he's coming from. Now, why did David let his son get away with this? Parents sometimes irrationally defend their children. Do you think David felt guilty or hypocritical? Not enough to do anything about it. This is a bad story. Yes. I mean, this is an excellent point. David probably is thinking, who am I to judge here? Because David has also taken a woman that didn't belong to him for himself just because he wanted to. So, I mean, kind of the pot calling the kettle black here, right? Really, if anything, Amnon's a chip off the old block here. So, they have this very strained relationship moving forward. Absalom murders Amnon. Absalom would probably use the word execute. right? Amnon is killed. All their little brothers are there too, by the way. Like little Solomon is there, who's like probably like elementary school age at this time. It says all the king's sons were there. And all of a sudden, what do you think some of them thought about Absalom? Some of them were probably like, forget that guy. He's crazy. I'm not with him. And some of them were like, I better do what he says. He's no joke. This is literally going to cause like a civil war. And David's sons are all going to go to war with each other. That's why I said the thing the other day about why did Solomon become king after David? Solomon's like, he's like the oldest son of like the fifth or sixth wife of Bathsheba, right? Why does he get to be king? Well, because when it's all said and done, he's one of the last ones standing. He's one of the last ones still around. So, what do you think the conversation is moving forward? David's already had a very strained relationship with his family. Now, Absalom has murdered Amnon. What do you think that next family dinner is going to be like? You think everybody's getting invited over to the next time someone wants to have everyone over to the house for dinner? What do you think everyone's wondering about? Do we really want to go to this party? You thought showing up for Thanksgiving was rough enough, right? Do we really want to all go over to Absalom's house for Passover next year? Probably not. You know? This is a very strained relationship. Let's keep reading. Verse 37 says, and David mourned many days for his son Amnon. And Absalom fled to his grandfather, Ptolemy, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. He stayed there in Geshur for 3 years. And King David, now reconciled to Amnon's death, longed to be reunited with his son Absalom. So Absalom actually leaves the country for 3 years. He gets out of Israel. And David says that he has to be reconciled to Amnon's death. He's got to wrap his head around this. He's mourning. He's grieving. He's also got to kind of figure out, like, how did we get here? Like, look what happened on his watch. In his own house. Right? And oh, by the way, I'm the reason for this. And he knows it. And so after 3 years, he wants to see his son Absalom again. David has a lot to be sad about. He has a daughter who's been traumatized, a son who is a murderer, and another son who is dead. Look at what has become of his family, what he let happen on his watch. And so years pass, and David wants to reconcile with Absalom. Flip over to chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 23. It says, and then Joab, who's like one of David's right-hand guys, went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king gave this order: Absalom may go to his own house, but he must never come into my presence. He says, I want him home, but I don't want to talk to him. He can go home, but he can't come here. That seems weird, right? But people do weird stuff whenever it comes to family. You know? They just do. You got weird people in your family. Again, if you can't think of any, I hate to tell you. You're the weird one. So Absalom did not see the king. Now Absalom was praised as the most handsome man in all of Israel. He was flawless from head to foot. This is the weirdest part of this whole story. You ready? He cut his hair only once a year, and then only because it was so heavy. And when he weighed it out, it came to 5 pounds. What? That is so weird. And if you're thinking, why is that important to the story? Just wait. If you don't know what I'm talking about yet, Absalom's hair is going to be a very important detail next week. Okay? That is crucial to the story. All right? I feel like I say this all the time. We'll be like watching a movie, and like Maggie always wants to watch something with me, but then she talks the whole time. Right? So she loves all the cooking shows. We were watching Top Chef the other night, and they're like explaining, here's the twist. You have to make all these things, and you only have 30 minutes to make it. And she hasn't stopped talking the entire time. And they're about to start. I go, do you understand what the challenge is? And she goes, no. And I go, well, let's rewind and let's pay attention, because this is going to be a very important detail later on. Okay? You're going to need to know this. You're missing key plot points here. Okay? Absalom's hair is going to be important to the story. That's all I want to tell you. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Raise a hand if you know what I'm talking about. How many of you are like, what the heck is this? Okay, great news. Look, I'm not going to be mad if you read ahead. This book came out like 3,000 years ago, but it's been out for a while, so the spoiler alert has been lifted, okay? I won't be mad if you read ahead, okay? Obviously, that would be weird if the pastor was like, don't go home and read your Bible. Yeah, just read a different part. No, you can read ahead. It's great. It's so weird, okay? Also, when your hair gets super long, it's heavy. My hair's never been long enough for it to for me to feel the effect of the weight of it. I don't get that. So, also, how fast is this dude's hair growing? That once a year he's growing 5 pounds of hair? That seems like a lot. I've never let my hair grow out for a whole year. I don't think it would be that long, man. You know? No, if anything, they were smaller. Yeah, actually, fun fact, we've been getting bigger because we've all had enough to eat our entire life. Since like the Industrial Revolution. Like most everybody who ever lived was much smaller. In the days of Jesus, 2,000 years ago, a Roman soldier, who were like the biggest, strongest guys around, they would have been like the professional athletes of their day, were on average 5'8". Which means that like all the people in the Bible were probably like 4'10", 4'11", 5'2", somewhere in that range. Right? Yeah. So the only reason that we're bigger is that when the Industrial Revolution happened, all of a sudden everyone had enough to eat every winter. Yeah. So there you go. Fun fact. What were we talking about? Okay, yeah. So he only cuts his hair when it's too heavy. I've never experienced this. I don't know what it's like to have long hair. I will say, some of you will never experience this. When you grow a beard for the first time you go swimming with a beard, you can feel it swish in the water, attached to your face, and it's it's a weird but good feeling. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Has anyone, some of you guys, Andrew, you have the longest beard in the room. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Yeah, you go swimming for the first time when you grow a beard out, and you're like, whoa, I'm getting a little drag, right? It's pretty incredible. Anyway, he only cuts his hair once a year, and it comes to about 5 pounds, okay? Verse 27. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and his daughter's name was Tamar. So they're pretty close, right? I mean, obviously. This has like really bonded them. He names his daughter after his sister. I tried so hard to get somebody to name a baby after me in my family. They won't do it. And then I tried really hard to get someone to name a baby Boaz, and they won't do that either, right? Maybe Henry will have a little Boaz one day, right? When Maggie was being born, we were trying to pick out a name. Amanda had Henry picked out from we were teenagers. She was like, if I ever have a baby boy, I want to name him Henry. I like the name Henry. Henry Bowman's like a man name, you know? Like when he's 50 years old and has a beard, that's a man name, Henry Bowman. Sounds like it could be like today, or like he could be like on a train in the 1850s, you know what I mean? Like a pocket watch, the whole deal. But we could not pick a girl name. And so I really like the name Emily. The problem is I have a cousin named Emily, right? And I was like, what about Emily? And Amanda's like, we already have an Emily in our family. I'm like, she would love it if we named our baby after her. It would be her favorite thing that's ever happened. Yeah, right? It's a great name. Yeah, she would have loved it. But alas, right? It did take us forever to find a girl name that we both liked. But he names his daughter Tamar, right? And she was very beautiful. And Absalom lived in Jerusalem for 2 years, but he never got to see the king. So, we all understand what it's like to have complicated family dynamics. No specifics, but just nod if you know what I'm talking about, right? We all got that one cousin or that one uncle or whatever, a sibling, maybe a parent. David's family is next level. None of you were on this level. No matter how crazy your family is, they're not here. Why is David's family extra complicated? Like, why is this happening? Yeah, listen. The reality is that because of David's inability to control his sexual desires, he has completely messed his family up. Think about having that many moms and that many siblings. That's just a recipe. Everyone in the Bible who has multiple wives and siblings from all different wives. Think about the story of Jacob and his 12 sons. All they did was fight with each other. He married 2 sisters, and they hated each other's guts from the get-go. Yes, sir. David did almost the identical thing with Bathsheba. It's the same thing. Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like it. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah. So Nathan comes to David and he says, because of what you've done, the Lord is not pleased with what you've done. And because of what you've done, your family will never know peace. So the question is, yeah, the question is this just the punishment for David's sin? Or is this like kind of just the natural consequence of this is the bed you made, and of course this is the environment that you created? And I think the answer is yes. Yeah. I mean, you can't build your family this way and expect things not to turn out crazy, you know? Yeah, but then also that your family will never know peace, right? Basically, I think the way to read that part of the story is God coming in and saying, David, look at what you've done. This is the road that you've set yourself on. Like this, it didn't have to be this way. And God has forgiven David, and God loves David, and David was truly repentant, but that doesn't change the fact that, look, this is the bed you made, man. The story of Bathsheba reveals to us that David is deeply flawed in this one area of sexual immorality. He's so virtuous and godly all throughout the rest of the story. Honestly, it's kind of the only thing that ruins David's record. If you were making up a story, you would have David be the perfect hero. But he was a real person, and all of us struggle with sin. Maybe not this one or in this way, but we all do. This is an incredibly human story. And this story that we're reading tonight is like 20 years later. And David is still feeling the consequence of his sinful decisions. Also, this story draws parallels to other people earlier in the story who failed. This is showing us that David is really no different than them. David can't control his son, just like Eli couldn't control his wicked and worthless sons. Amnon takes what he wants, just like David did with Bathsheba. So what's kind of the takeaway here? I think there's so many things we can learn about this story. So many things we can learn from this story. Number one, how you lead your family has a massive effect on how they turn out. It just does. Particularly for the dads in the room, for the men in the room. I'm not saying that mom's leadership isn't important. Moms and dads have two crucial roles. They're both godly and they're both good and they're both blessings from God. But as these kids' father, David should have done better. Also, generational sin is real. Families create and pass on legacies, good ones and bad ones. They just do. And I would tell this to students all the time whenever I work with teenagers. You don't have to grow old with what you grew up with. You don't. There have been so many people over the years who have said, it's going to stop with me. The history of your family, however many generations back, grandparents, your parents, down to you, has just been like a wildfire running down a mountain. And you're the one who's going to decide to stop running from it and start fighting it. We have to wage war on our sin as Christians. And the way that we do that is going to impact our families, and it can have generational ramifications. Good and bad. Yes, sir. Which part? You don't have to grow old with what you grew up with. Yeah. I didn't make that up. I heard someone else smarter than me say that. I just stole it and pretended like I made it up. I do that a lot. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That it didn't have to be this way. Yeah. But you're right. Like, it didn't have to turn out like this. It could have gone differently. David could have made very different decisions. He could have led a very different life, but he didn't. Yeah. So, another great maxim here, especially for those of us who have young kids: what parents do in moderation, children do in excess, both good and bad. What parents do in moderation, children will do in excess. This is just a general principle that really bears out. So that means that we need to model godly living to our kids. You know, I was a youth pastor for many years. I had a lady show up at church one time and dropped her daughter off. This is at Highlands. Highlands is a rough place, man. It's called Highlands for a reason. Lots of drugs, lots of violence. When we first moved there was a rash of murders. Yeah, it was a rough place to live and minister. And on the east side of Houston, and a lot of good people there, a lot of really good things, but there was a lot of darkness there. And we had this lady show up, came to church, walked in, wanted to talk to the youth pastor. That was me. She walked her daughter in, who was probably about 14, and she said she keeps getting in trouble at school. Teach her to be good. And then turned around and walked out the door. And let me tell you something. Having her 1 hour a week on Wednesday nights didn't work. I was unsuccessful in teaching her to be good. Decidedly so. Turns out that there wasn't much I could do 1 hour a week. I've had people come to me, and I want to say this in all gentleness. I worked with young people for many years, still work with our young adult ministry here at the church. And I have parents come to me and say, you know, my kid won't come to church. I really need you to reach out to them. And I'm happy to do that. But at a certain point, I just want to go, I would love for them to be here. We're here the same time every week. Week in and week out. We're here. Same time, every week. If you want them to come, you want me to make sure that that happens, I got bad news for you. I don't live in their house. They don't live in my house. I bet if they lived in my house, I could do something about getting them here. But you can't really say that to people. Can't tell you how many people over the years have said, well, he doesn't want to come to church and I don't want to force him to come. You force him to go to school 5 days a week. If he decided he didn't want to do that all of a sudden, would you go, okay? You force them to brush their teeth? Oh boy, do you have to force them to brush their teeth. You say those little chiclets are going to fall out if you don't brush them. Now get in there. And they don't want to do it. They go in there and they spit and they're done. You're like, no, try again. You force them to eat vegetables. You force them to do all kinds of things that they don't want to do. You don't want to go, well, I don't want them to grow up one day and hate brushing their teeth. That's crazy talk. Also, by the way, they're 13. Why do they get to vote? If your middle schooler decided that they didn't want to go to school anymore, would you go, well, I really want them to love education and I don't want to force it on them? No, of course not. So why does the most important thing in the world get a pass? It drives me nuts. It's just many years as a disgruntled youth pastor coming out. The last thing we learn is this part of David's life is the part that we hear about the least, because it's not fun. It's not fun to read this story. This is not a fun story. This is actually a really gross, evil, horrible story. But it reveals so much about sinful human nature and about the character of God. Look at how much discussion we had just tonight talking about this. Probably more than we've had in this entire story of David, right? Look at what this story reveals to us about truly sinful, fallen human nature. But that also reveals to us so much about the character of God because he is with David even in his mess of a life. Even in all this, God is still graceful and loving and forgiving. So next week, we're going to read about Absalom and about what happens next. And it's going to get worse for David. It's going to get real bad. And then the hair thing, I believe it's next week. It might be 2 weeks from now, but the hair thing is coming back around. So be on the lookout for that. Tell you what, let's say a word of prayer and we'll get out of here. Father God, thank you so much that you love sinners like us. That we are not worthy of your love or your grace, but that you don't love us because we deserve it. You don't love us because we're good. You love us because you're good. So Lord, help us to learn from stories like this about submitting to your will, about waging war against our flesh and against our sin, to be vigilant against temptation in an effort to honor you with our lives, with our families, with our whole selves, to be living sacrifices. Pray, Lord, as we continue to read the story of David in these last few weeks, that your Holy Spirit would just illuminate the words of the story to us, that you would speak to us. That's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. All right, you guys, we'll see you on Sunday. You're dismissed. Saturday, if you're a guy. If you're a dude, we'll see you Saturday.